I realized the importance of showing up when somebody invites you to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a test. And I'm lucky that I passed, but also other people can pass the test too. So show up when a midwife invites you to come talk to them.
Just go. Just go. You never know. You might find out that they're not the midwife for you.
And what a blessing that would be.
Right.
Hi, my name is Augustine Colebrook, and I'm the principal at Midwifery Wisdom Collective. I speak on this podcast about big picture political issues and the future of our profession.
Hey y'all, I am Jamara, and I'm a midwife. I'm also a birth justice activist, and this season I am looking forward to sharing stories of Black midwives and the communities they serve.
Hello, beloved birth community. I'm Angela Love, nurse midwife since 2004, preceptor, and mother. I have a home birth practice called Midwife Love and a national telehealth practice called Midwife RX. My mission is to keep birth choices available and to educate the next generation of midwives for our daughters and grandchildren. Matriarchy now.
I'm Layla Wyatt. I get to share with you the voices of student midwives from across the country and beyond. This season, we focus on those students who just graduated, are about to sit for the NARM, or did yesterday, and we get tips and tricks for you for what happens at the end of the student midwife journey. So tell us about you. Who are you, and then why midwifery?
My name is Lindsey Oakes, and my pronouns are they and them. I'm a queer and non-binary midwife. I live on the unceded territory of the Kumeyaay people in San Diego, California. And I am introducing myself like that today because there is a large community of Indigenous folks in my area, and they deserve to be respected. They've been here far longer than I have been, than my family, my people have been. And so I work with Indigenous midwives, and they deserve respect as well. And so even though sometimes it sounds clunky to say words that I'm not used to saying in front of San Diego, California, it deserves to be said first. And I am a guest on the land. And so I'm going to say it whether it sounds clunky or not.
It's interesting that you say that it feels clunky to say. Do you feel like others give you looks or reactions that make it feel uncomfortable, or do you feel like you're more welcome when you respect that?
I think that I am trying to be cautious on putting my voice over some other voices, and also cautious at the same time of not wanting to sound performative and like I'm doing it because I'm sitting and I'm talking with a new person. When I do my work, I do it quietly and I don't post it on Instagram. I'll post fun things on Instagram, but I don't post my learning and the things that make me humble. And maybe I should a little more, but it sounds clunky because I just have to get used to saying it.
Yeah, that's true. I think a lot of students want to share their journeys, like their student journeys, and sometimes they get shared before they have even had a chance to sit with them in their own bodies physically, right? And spiritually and heart, mentally, and things like that. I'm just saying I've experienced that. I've been in midwifery school a couple of years, and someone was like, I think I'm following the wrong person. I don't see you posting. It's like, I actually not sure how to share what I'm experiencing.
The midwife I work for, she has a saying, the plumber's plumbing is never fixed. And I think it applies to midwives because we care for ourselves last, or we tend to care for ourselves last because all we do is care for other people. And so I certainly didn't sit and take a breath after I passed the NARM. And I will take a breath in September when I take the month off, but I won't be taking any breaths
So you just like jumped right into a practice after you passed the NARM?
I have been working under Nicole Morales for 3 years, and I started out as a student assist, and I moved into a primary student when the student ahead of me, Emma Moreland, passed the NARM and became an LM CPM. And now that I'm a CPM, I'm not an LM, a licensed midwife in California yet, which means I can't practice on my own. I am still working with Nicole to support her, the clients I have dedicated my time to, and also the student under me, Phoebe-VelasquezIslas.
I cannot wait to talk more about them.
Yes.
I know that you shared some information about them earlier in your social media, and that sent me down a whole nother rabbit trail. So we'll jump into that. But before we go into talking about them, tell me about why or what brought you to birth work.
So this is a question on whenever I meet new midwife friends, we always inevitably ask how you decided you wanted to become a midwife. And I have 2 stories. So my one story is I graduated from community college. I went to San Diego State to become a speech language pathologist. I didn't like the medical system. I heard of midwifery and I worked on my application for a year. I joined and it became my passion. That's a great story. It sounds lovely. And then there's the real story where I graduated from community college. I moved to go to San Diego State and I was alone, moved out of my hometown for the first time in my life where I didn't know anybody. And all I had was Netflix on my computer. And so I would watch 19 Kids and Counting, and some of the Duggar girls were studying to become a midwife. And even though I'm not necessarily a fan of the family or their practices, it was the first time I had ever seen midwives portrayed in the media, and reality TV I just consumed. And so there are my 2 stories. I have to be honest.
That's so interesting. I actually have never seen the show 19 Kids and Counting. I think like I've heard of it. I got the gist of it.
You'll be fine.
Fine without it. Do you still watch a lot of reality TV stuff?
No, I don't. I watch a lot of the same shows over and over when I come home tired from a birth. Great British Baking Show, I'll watch over and over. Avatar: The Last Airbender. Mindless stuff that I don't really pay attention to.
I read something one time and I can't remember the exact words or the exact way it came about, but it was something along the lines of like people who have control issues or fear or trauma or something like that watch the same shows over and over because they always know how it will end and they feel safe in like, I know what this episode is going to do. I know this. And I'm like, what is that? And because I'm the same way. And I know a lot of midwives that are, right?
It's a subtle dig to Capricorn midwives, I think.
Well, it's also like we go to these unplanned experiences in our lives. Birth is so unpredictable and so uncontrollable because it's not our bodies and our experiences. And so it feels good to come home and just like watch that same episode of The Office that you know exactly what will happen or whatever.
Yes, the CPR episode gets me every time.
Yeah. Or the one where Dwight is delivering a baby. Have you seen that one?
I've seen every single episode multiple times. The Office is all too accurate.
Yeah, exactly. So you saw midwives on the reality TV show and you thought it would be a cool experience to jump ship from this like standard college experience and choose midwifery?
I come from a lot of very interesting people. I have a very interesting family, and I mean that in a wonderful and respectful way. And specifically my grandma, with whom I was very close, used to talk about how she wanted to have a fifth baby. There are 4 kids, my dad and then his 3 siblings. And my grandpa said, why don't you go back and go back to school instead? Instead of having another baby. And so she went back and she started studying biology and reproductive anatomy and physiology. And she would talk about that all the time and how cool it was to be a parent of 4 and also learning about anatomy and physiology. And so I think that she primed me to want to learn more about that. But yeah, when I discovered midwifery, it just made sense and I never stopped thinking about it. And 5-7 years later, I am here still.
Do you think that there are like some people who have like the thought process, the logistical brain for midwifery, and there are others who don't? Or do you think that that's something that we could all become?
I do. I think that there are people that are more capable of dealing with sleep deprivation and staying cool under incredible stress, not just from dealing with complications and emergency situations, but from pressure from families, from the stress of transferring with clients to the hospital. Midwives in California don't have hospital privileges, licensed midwives. So there are a lot of different stressful situations, and it's not easy and doesn't feel healthy always. And so I know a good amount of people that after they graduated did not go on to practice, or after they got their CPM.
Even after they graduated?
That they did it and that was it. And I know people that will get their CPM and their LM and are going to take a good long break before they decide to go back. For many reasons, but yeah, I think it's not easy.
Did you do any type of birth work before you went into midwifery? Like try to be a doula, try to do like that life before you decided to just go into it? Or
no, I had a big class. I went to Nizhoni Institute of Midwifery, which is the midwifery school here in San Diego that is now closing. It will no longer be accepting students. And so I am happy that I was able to get my CPM before the school closed. And so I don't have to go to another program. And so I had a big class. The point of the big class was that almost every single person was a doula.
Right.
And there were like 2 of us that were not. And it's better in some ways and not better in some ways. I had to learn a lot from the ground up, but no, being a doula is way, way hard. I can't do it. I take like 1 doula client a year and I probably never will again. It's way, way too hard. I cannot do the doula work. I have to stick with midwifery. So no.
Well, and you're right. Like it is one of those, like it's better and worse in both turns, because a lot of students have to unlearn being the doula in the room to be the midwife in the room. And a lot of students are better off and knowing that they were going to survive midwifery because they did the on-call life and they did the no sleep and they figured out what life was going to be like before they did this huge jump in investment to be a midwife. So like, you have to get and give.
And I appreciate that conversation that continues to go on. The midwives are not doulas conversation. It seems to be there are 2 sides. The midwives are not doulas and midwives can doula as well. And I wasn't trained in midwifery to separate the 2. Midwives are not above giving back pressure. Midwives are not above giving sips of water and wiping away tears. And also, if I have to deal with a complication, I'm going to, and I will do the repair on the other end. But there is nothing wrong with a midwife also giving emotional support. And that is my truth. And that is a hill that I will die on.
Yeah. I'm glad that we're both on that same hill together. It's a very similar mindset. I remember having this big breakdown one time because I think it was the assistant, or I was the birth assistant and not even the student. And the midwife is sitting on the edge of the bed with her steriles, like, just ready. And this woman is like thrashing around on the bed. And I looked at her like, aren't you going to be present with her? Like, grab her and take her into this moment. And I went to do it, and she was like, she didn't hire a doula.
Oh.
And I was at this like really challenging moment because, I mean, she's not wrong. This person did not go and hire a doula, and I didn't want to step in a space. I've never met this person before, all these things, but it was like at that moment, I was like, I will not be that midwife,
Yeah.
and I will attract the right clients, right? I will attract the clients that understand that they're going to need to walk a hard journey, but they're never going to do it alone. And, but that you're right. There are kind of like two schools of thought for sure.
Yeah. And I know both midwives in San Diego. We have the most midwives in our county per capita in the entire state of California. And so I know a lot of midwives that are in both categories.
Yeah.
And the ones that do not do doula work because they're midwives are wonderful midwives, and they have
Sure.
a lot of really good hands-on skills. And that works with their personalities and the clients that they attract. And then the other midwives attract those clients. And
Right. Exactly. So it always works out. Does it? Do you feel like it always works out?
no, but wouldn't that be nice? It would be nice.
Yeah. Some midwives that are not doulas or don't feel like they want to be, I think that they use the statement of like, you have to have this bird's eye view of the room. So you can't be double hip squeezing or taking charge or being that close, because what if you have to like remember heart tones and assessing for hemorrhage and checking times and, being in this other energy. And if you're so deep in it, you can't see above it, it can be dangerous. And so they're like, I'm just going to require that everyone hires a doula. Like it's going to be like a non-negotiable in my practice. What do you think about that?
I think that conversation has a lot there's and
all of our conversations have a lot of layers.
It is, there's something to be said about the overall type of clientele that home birth midwives attract, and specifically meaning you can pay out of pocket to have midwifery care because insurance doesn't cover it. And so there's that. And so the people that they really don't have the disposable income to have midwives, and then find one that they connect with, and then all of a sudden they have to be told that they have to pay another amount of money to have a doula, otherwise they won't get support, is an unfair financial burden. And I don't plan on practicing that way. And I also was trained, I was trained by a wonderful midwife that does not practice that way also.
Mm-hmm.
And so
would you say that, because I've heard that kind of come up a couple of times, is like the way you're going to be practicing is very much revolves around the way that you've been trained. And so with some students, because I think this is a reality in our world that we live in, is there are some students who are in the wrong preceptorship and there isn't a choice. They can't move, they can't travel, they're being abused, they're being taken advantage of, they're learning abuse, they're learning to take advantage. And that for me feels like it perpetuates abuse and damage and poor care. But what choices do they have, right? Like they can't move, there are no other midwives in the area, et cetera, et cetera. Have you had any experience, what I call taking and leaving, right? Like, oh, I'm going to take this from this experience. I'm going to leave that because I don't want to take that into my body. Like, have you had any experience with that? And what feedback can you give to people who can't maybe have such a great experience like you have?
I have had the wonderful privilege of having over 50 midwives to work with here in my county. So I cannot understand what it's like to have to work with somebody that I don't align with in midwifery. And on a moral level, that's also very important to me, that I had somebody that I meshed with, and I worked with many different midwives before I found my preceptor, which then transitioned into my mentor. And so while I was lucky, I did work with people that don't really, I'm trying to have compassion for them looking back, that maybe don't know how to take care of themselves. And so if they become stressed or have low blood sugar or don't have the energy to focus on the situation and also talk to students that maybe don't know what's going on, they can become mean and
just a little hangry.
and that is not the student's responsibility. And I also think that that's unprofessional to degrade somebody in front of a client and their family. And those midwives get a reputation. And I do not believe in bashing on social media because their business is not my business, but the communities in which people practice know who is safe and who is not. And that also goes for other queer and trans midwives as well. The queer and trans students as well as midwives know who is safe and who's not. And that is important and hard learned.
Yeah. Well, before I go in, because we're here in asking, like, how did you choose Nicole Morales? Like, what, I want to know more about your interview experience process, like what that was. But before we go there, I'd like to jump back. Why did you choose Nizhoni? Was it because it was local and it connected to you in some way, or were there options that you went through in your mind and tested out?
There were options. I love education. And so I was not opposed to moving away and getting a bachelor's degree or a master's degree. And I also toyed with nurse midwifery before I decided on home birth midwifery. And I think that I chose Nizhoni because it was local, but also because of the community of midwives that I would get to learn from is built in here because of the school. Whereas if I decided to attend Bastyr, I would fly in a couple times and I still would have to find midwives in my community. And then, I am not supporting the local midwifery school. They don't know how I've been trained. So why would they hire me or move to Philadelphia and attend a certified midwife program or get a master's? I could have done it. I'm a community midwife for a reason, and I like my community here. So.
Yeah, you are super lucky.
Yes.
You're like the last year, right?
There's one year under me that will graduate as the school closes. And there are also wonderful midwives and soon to be midwives in that graduating class. So
any news about the school, like just revamping in any way, shape, or form? Or
COVID was really hard on a lot of programs, and I know that COVID is a divisive topic, and so I'll just say that some people did not want to attend in person and only attend online, and some people only wanted to attend in person and couldn't do online. And the midwives that are coming in as instructors deserve to be paid, and they deserve to be paid well for their time because they're educating the future, and rent in San Diego is astronomical and gas is now astronomical. So it was the perfect storm to ruin something that was really great. But there's nothing wrong with other midwifery programs, and there will continue to be midwives here. So I don't think all hope is lost. It's just unfortunate that we've lost San Diego's midwifery school.
how did Nizhoni's program work? Was it like a 3-year certificate? Is it like a 4 year? Is it like you can take up to 7? Like, how does that program laid out?
The program is 38 months.
Okay.
So 3 years and some change. And it's once a week for 4 weeks per topic. And you go all day in person and you fully immerse yourself in the topic. And then in the next month, you learn from a different midwife on a different topic.
Oh, wow.
It was very untraditional. I came from structure of San Diego State University, and I knew what instructors expected of me, and the professors were very strict. And then I come to Nizhoni, and there are people that bring a bag of crystals to line up around them. Drum, and sometimes people sing, and even though that's ridiculous, we see it in birth too. I'm not going to judge the way that somebody wants to give birth, and so it wasn't my place to yuck that yum, as my wife would say. The program was 1 day a week, 4 weeks in a row. If there was a 5th week, we would get that week off, and we would also have in-person skills where we would come in ideally once a month and train all day in hemorrhage and shoulder dystocia, breech, and pap tests, IVs, blood draws, all of the hands-on skills that you need, basic vitals, and well-person exams. And so that was how it was lined up. And they wanted you to have a preceptorship, and it wasn't required to come in with one. And I also think that's an unfair burden to put on midwives, to just accept this person that has no idea how to be a midwife because it's required to get into a program. So there's that. But I worked full time for the first half of school, and so I didn't have a preceptor, and so I felt a little behind. So when it comes to the didactic portion, I did well. I'm type A in that way. I'm just going to do well when it comes to stuff like that. But when it comes to hands-on, I was a nanny and a postpartum doula, and my wife was studying to be a web developer at home. And so I was the only one working. And so I couldn't dedicate the time that practice deserves to a student. And so I think halfway through my 2nd year, I then got into preceptorship, which is where I really learned how to be a midwife. And so that was my favorite part of the program, is pairing the information with actually doing it in prenatals and at birth and postpartums.
So, you answered my question when you said your favorite thing was pairing them together, because a lot of people choose the PEP, right? The performance evaluation program, where you don't get any didactic work. It's just apprenticeship and reading and writing some reports and things like that. And I think in California, it's the California challenge, right? Like you have to do MEEC and a certain amount of extras and then test, but you can't do PEP in California.
The PEP is not accepted here in California. You can call it high standards, you can call it different standards, you can just say that it's not accepted here, but you have to attend a 3-year program. Can't be 2 year, has to be at least 3 year. I had 6 years to get my births and my hours,
right?
A little over 2,000 hands-on hours, which you have way more than that by the time you're done with marathon births and clinic days and stuff like that.
I know. And you're always like, what do I count at the births? I was a 30-hour birth, but did I work for 30 hours because I slept for 4?
Absolutely. I'm counting every single one of those hours. I'm counting the drive home with my midwife and my other student on the phone, so I don't
briefing.
I'm counting when we go out to Denny's after, because we also don't want to fall asleep, and we're talking about how cool and hard it is to be a midwife. I counted every single one of those hours because I did it, and all of the other students should do that too.
That is such good feedback, because I think that that's not happening.
No. And I also, I want to be, another privilege that I had in midwifery is I was in a paid preceptorship. And that is not common. And it's not why I picked Nicole, because it wasn't our agreement when we started. But if I were to have a student, I'm so fresh that I couldn't possibly have one now. But someday when I do, I will absolutely pay them, and pay them as much as I can, because of what was put into me. Could have been more, right? That you can never, being a midwife is so hard. We deserve more than what we get. But, I was in a paid preceptorship, and that was a big deal.
I don't know if you are on all of the social media groups or not, but that's like a really heavy topic, is to pay your student or not to pay your student. And why do you think that is so divided?
Again, calling on my compassion for all of the people with all of the opinions, understand why a home birth midwife needs to have the $5,000 they get per client. It's around $5,000 here on average in my county, at least. And if you think about all the prenatals and time at birth and postpartum and charting hours and texts and phone calls, it's like $1 an hour. It's really not much. And so I can understand why a midwife would want to have the money that they earned, and it's their name on the line, be theirs. But that's where my understanding stops. You're getting free labor from people that deserve to be paid, that sometimes they have a job on top of being a student midwife. And I don't have kids. Most student midwives I know did have children, and many children that they needed to support. And it is not fair to expect somebody to work 40 hours for free and then talk shit about them on Facebook because you don't want to pay them. I think that that's ridiculous. And you're really showing your ass when you do that. And
what do you think about these like preceptorships who think they should get paid?
I am sure that they were burned. I cannot imagine them not being burned and asking for money. And trust is hard built and easily lost. And I get it. And also, that's rude. And I don't really agree with that. But if somebody's going to pay to be in an apprenticeship with another midwife, and they can afford to do it, and that's what they're going to do, then I hope that they get good things out of it. I hear about people not signing off on hours and signing off on births and prenatals, and I have experienced that, perhaps not maliciously, but I have had some paperwork not signed off by other midwives that I worked with, and that was really stressful when numbers matter, which is, its own pressured topic there. But
were they not signed off just because like they didn't feel like you had met the standard to be signed off yet, or it was just like they forgot, or it was
you wonder, right? You wonder if it's personal or if it's a student thing. You can try and be likable all you want, but you can't give 100% to every single midwife that you work with, especially if they're looking for a student assist because they don't have anybody to work with, but they also don't want to pay you. So I don't want it to seem like I'm talking shit about my community. I just believe people deserve to be paid for their work and should pay their bills. And that is what I think about that.
Yeah. Well, some of the things that come up with other students is, I wish someone had told me, right? Or I wish someone had helped me understand what I was getting into, or I wish someone had helped me stand up for myself, or I wish I had been smarter in the beginning about how to set boundaries and standards and things like that. And so that's why I deep dive into some of these things, is because there are literally folks who don't know and don't have a good doorway to have crucial, challenging conversations.
The boundaries talk will never end. And I'm a big supporter of therapy, especially for midwives. So we can talk about the boundaries that we need to have with our therapists on our own time. But I experienced that as well. I didn't know what I didn't know until I knew it, and then I couldn't take it back. And you can't back out, really, or you feel like you can't back out. And so the way that I try and prevent that for people that come and ask me for my opinion, if I'm going to put my name on something, then I'm going to really think about it, and I'm going to be careful with my words, and I'm going to be respectful, and I'm going to be honest. So I've had people ask me about certain midwives, and I have told them what that preceptorship might look like, and that it might be unhealthy. And so I will really try and protect other students from the abuse that they face. And that's also like a savior complex, I guess. Yeah. A lot of newly licensed midwives are really so close to being students that I think they also want to like protect as well, but there's only so much you can do. And people need preceptors, whether or not they're, shitty situations. They have to, if you're going to become a midwife, then you need a mentor.
I don't know if you feel this, and I don't know if it's the same in your community, but I definitely feel like this generation of students, like the ones graduating now in the next 2 years, et cetera, we're just like not down for the bullshit. Like we're really just not down for the like horizontal violence and trickle down trauma and I was abused, so you need to be abused type of relationships. And that maybe like this is that like a generational, blindness, but I feel like that's a new thing in the past 30 years. Like, I don't feel like there's been a generation before us who was like, I refuse. They were just kind of like, well, I have to because I want to be a midwife, right? Yes. Do you feel that similar sensation in your community too?
I do. It's there. You hear a lot about the hazing of students, and I didn't see it as a student because I think it was phased out. But I hear from midwives, I had to wash my preceptor's car, and I had to be in the office for 3 full days a week, and then do home visits 2 days a week, and then also do paperwork, and then do births, and all for free. And they treated me horribly, and all I did was cry, but I'm a midwife now, and so I turned out fine. Why can't you do this? And our cultural reset has really taken a lot of that away, kind of like the movies that were popular and fun in the 80s and 90s, and you look back and you're like, oh, that is not funny. That
was rape.
Oh my gosh. Yes, Ace Ventura. I'm like, sir, you are so transphobic. You got to stop. I'm taking this out. This is not funny. So I think that is kind of how it is. You can't abuse people. It shouldn't be a controversial topic, but
yeah, you're right. So when you were looking for your preceptor, you're halfway through, right? You're halfway through midwifery school, you've been working, and now it's time to find a preceptor. Before you even started looking, did you set like, these are my non-negotiables, or like your sacred yeses and holy no's, et cetera, right? Like, did you create an outline for the interview or the process of finding one that you set for yourself?
Absolutely not. No, I was actually thinking,
come on, Lindsey.
I was thinking about quitting midwifery school because I had gone through almost 2 full years without really having much experience. And I also mentioned before that I wasn't a doula. And so I started school in 2017. And so by 2019, I had like 5 births that I had ever been to in my life, where there are or that have been to thousands of births. And so I would cry to my other student midwives and say, I want to be a nurse midwife. They get paid way better than us. They have shifts, and I don't have to worry about being trained because they give the training to me. And then I woke up, and I can't, you can't cry every day for the rest of your life. And so And so I started doing a birth here, a birth there with different midwives and not finding the right fit. And I had a best friend in the program that's still my best friend. It's the midwife that I share my office with now, and the one that I work with. Her name is Emma Moreland. She is one of the few Black midwives in all of California and in San Diego, and she's the best. And I would call her and cry. And she had her preceptor, Nicole Morales. And my only introduction to her was teaching at the school and taking a spinning babies course from her. But what really made me like Nicole was her storytelling. And storytelling is a passion of hers.
Yeah.
She's very good at it. She's very humble, but she really appreciates culture and passing on culture through stories. And so after she told one of her classic stories, I called Emma and I was like, Emma, I am going to ask for your blessing, and it's okay if you say no, but I would like to approach Nicole to see if she'll take on a second student, because I don't have a preceptor and I don't know how much longer I can do this without a preceptor. And she thought about it, and then she said, of course, because she's wonderful. And I called Nicole, because she gives out her number to her students, and asked her if she was accepting new students, and she said no. And then we talked on the phone for 30 minutes about why she's not accepting new students, but also that if I wanted to come to lunch with her in the following week at her house and talk about midwifery, then I was welcome to do that. And I did it.
Damn straight you did.
I could have been hurt and taken the no and then kept moving. But I mean, who's to say no to homemade tacos in City Heights with a midwife that is, a wonderful storyteller and invited you over? And so I went over, I had lunch with her and her youngest child, and we talked. She talked about her passion for breech birth and pregnancy. I talked about my passion for queer and trans people, and also caring for people that have experienced sexual assault with compassion and with empathy. And by the end of the conversation and the end of lunch, her youngest child said, I like them. Right in front of me. And that youngest child is about to be 17. And I adore them. They're far, far wiser beyond their years than any of, I'm 30, so way wiser than me. But that was my end. I had the approval of the youngest child, and Nicole invited me to come to a prenatal day, which was on a Sunday. I think it was 2 days later. And I went, and I decided I was going to take really good notes. I was going to be the best charter that had ever existed, because I didn't know how to do anything else. And I still chart really, really well. And I just kept coming. She didn't invite me back. I just kept showing up on Sundays and then on Tuesdays. And then I started bonding with the clients.
Were you like, I'm just coming by the way, or did you just literally show up?
She said, if you wanted to come to the next prenatal day, and I did. And I treated it as if it was my preceptorship, and it was. And then 3 years later, I realized the importance of showing up when somebody invites you to show up. And it was a test, and I'm lucky that I passed, but also other people can pass the test too. So show up when a midwife invites you to come talk to them.
Just go. Just go. You never know. You might find out that they're not the midwife for you.
And what a blessing that would be.
Right. Totally. And you might just be told that you're liked by the youngest child.
Fantastic.
Like I said, a fangirling Nicole Morales. I wrote her a couple of months ago. Like I said, I'm traveling around as a student. I was like, hi, can I move to San Diego? And she, similar. I'm not accepting any students right now, but you're welcome to drop in on a day. And I was like, did I mention I'm in Kentucky? I can't just drop in on a day, but maybe I'll just book a flight after this conversation and just do it,
San Diego's not a bad place to visit, I have to say.
So, okay, was there anything that you knew you did not want in a preceptor? Like you were just like, this is a non-negotiable, like I cannot deal with this.
At first, yes. When I first started my education, I was really hoping to have a queer midwife. And I know that they exist. And there are a lot more people that say that they're a queer midwife with their chest now, but 5 years ago, it wasn't exactly the same. And it probably won't be the same again in 5 years, but I would email people that had the little rainbow at the bottom of their website, or the ones that I heard through the grapevine were queer, whether publicly or not. And I asked if they were accepting students because I wanted to learn from somebody like me.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody told me no. And that was so disheartening that I can tell I still hold the disappointment in my body, because I did want, I want queer people to be treated well. And so I wanted to have a preceptor that would treat people like me well. And Nicole did that. And if she wouldn't have, then I wouldn't have stayed with her. I can't separate myself from my queerness or my transness. So if I would have felt unsafe or unappreciated, then it wouldn't have worked out. So I guess I did set a boundary. I'm proud of myself.
Was there anything specific? You say Nicole did that, right? Was there anything specific, or was it just like treating people like human beings?
Low standard.
I mean, I'm sorry, but that is literally sometimes like the basic requirement, and that gets lost when people don't understand other people. They don't become human beings.
Yes, and that, I think that's a great way to put it, is understanding. And if you don't understand, then just listening instead of hearing, just actually listen. And she did. She listened to me. I offered to change her paperwork where the boxes that said mother or father could be parent or birthing person or support person, to put 3 lines for parents instead of just 2, because there is also a large non-monogamous community here in San Diego, and they exist everywhere. And she said yes, and she still has that paperwork, and she changed her language, and it was really hard. I started using they them pronouns in the middle of my preceptorship with her, and she worked really hard to get it right. And it's not easy if you're not used to being around people that use different pronouns from you all the time. And she worked really hard. So I think it's the effort that she put in, and that if she was going to talk about it, then she was going to be about it.
And intentional.
Absolutely. Everything intentional as much as possible.
You know, your desire to learn from a queer midwife is not, it's not rare, in the sense that I hear so many of the students that I interview on this podcast who are Indigenous, Black, Brown midwives want to learn from midwives like them. And it's not possible when only 2% of out-of-hospital midwives are Black, right? And so it's really sad and hard for them as well. And I can't help but think this generation is different.
I do. I agree.
We're going to have more queer midwives that will say yes to people who are looking to learn from them.
Midwives. We're gonna be the midwives that we wish we had. And there are plenty of white midwives. Like, they'll continue to be licensed. They'll continue to
white, cisgendered, not right. Like it's fine. We're fine.
They're gonna keep existing because most of the population, you know, is a certain way. But the more queer and trans and Black and Indigenous and other people of color, the more people that can find midwives and then become the midwives that they wish they had themselves,
And then serve the people that need to be served by people who want to be served by them.
It's changing, and it's not changing fast enough. The world's not set up to support a student midwife, but the community here in San Diego is pretty diverse, and I feel lucky about that. So
have you kind of set like your heart and your mind already out saying like you will only take a certain type of midwifery student in order to like stay true to that, or would you not say that?
I would say yes, but not for the reason I think that you're getting at. I would need to feel safe with any student that I took, and feel safe as a person and as the midwife that's going to put my license on this birth that I'm attending, and also somebody that will treat my clients with respect and be all in. If you are going to be in for a birth, you're going to be all in, whether you love the client from the start or you have to find something to love about them and hopefully end up falling in love by the end. And so I think that safety and finding somebody that fits you, it's like a marriage. It really is. And I will find that right person, just like I found my right people. Without
saying like, and they have to be queer because that's my thing.
Plus 10.
Right. Like that's, and what do you think about, again, yes, even if it's someone who is a safe individual, what do you think about white cisgendered midwives just saying like, I'm only going to take Black students, or I'm only going to take queer students because they don't have enough access to get preceptors? I want to be that person that gives them that.
While I think that they're coming from a good place, and I get it, it's a bit of a savior thing when a white midwife is going to say, I'm not accepting any students that aren't this, that, or the other. It doesn't mean I don't think that you should do that. But if when you say it comes across kind of like you're centering yourself, and that's very judgmental on my part. And I tend to be a very black and white thinker. And so I'm trying to,
that's one side. Totally.
Gray, but
I'm here to learn from what you think anyway. So it doesn't matter.
I don't need to say I'm only going to work with Black midwives for the rest of my life, because what if they don't want to work with me? What if all of the Black student midwives in the entirety of San Diego don't want to work with a queer and non-binary midwife? And then I put that out there, and then I'm sitting here, listening to crickets. It's just, I'm not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, and even if someone is Black and queer, doesn't mean that they're a safe provider for someone of a different religious thought process, or
Absolutely.
any other, just because you're in a minority group does not mean you're safe for every minority.
Right. I felt my entire studenthood, and I feel it now. I'm not out at work to every single client that we have, because not every single client has the same capacity for humanity. Doesn't exactly sound right. Not everybody is this, I'm not going to tell.
It's almost like a maturity, or it's like a cognitive maturity of compassion. I don't know. We have to find that term.
And there's sometimes people that just don't know. They have never met a queer person in their life, or they never realized it. And then there are people that actively don't like queer people or trans people, just the same as there are people that actively are racist. And those people also pay to have home births, and so it's a strange place to be in. I don't want to feel like I have to take hateful people just to pay my bills. And also there are opportunities for growth that that people can have. Maybe they don't know that trans people are people too until they meet a trans person. And they're like, oh, I get it. They're people too.
You're not a pink unicorn like I thought in my mind I was gonna see. Right? Like it's a weird, I'm not sure what they're thinking
my
it is.
kids, you know,
Right.
it's, yeah. So I don't think it's everybody's responsibility to educate other people because it takes a lot of effort. But while I have the spoons, I will be feeding as many people as possible.
Will you be in your own practice? Well, I guess that leads me to my next one. Like, where do you plan to practice? Do you have a specific community you're looking to serve? Do you have a name for your new practice? Tell me all about this. You've graduated, you're a CPM.
Yes.
And what is your next thing?
I have to become a licensed midwife in California in order to practice. So
Right.
I will be applying for licensure. I should have already done it, but midwives are very busy, licensed or not. I will stay in San Diego. I love it here. I love my community here, not just my midwifery community, but my queer community and the friends that I've made since I moved here in 2013. I love what I've created here. I come from a small town called South Lake Tahoe, California, where people were very close and it was very much a community, a family, whether you like people or not. And I like that I created that here. The only reason I would ever move is if politically it became unsafe for me to continue to stay in this country. And that's a sad conversation and that's a reality. So
it's a very real reality.
I won't be serving one kind of person, but I am in another program currently called STREAM, Scar Tissue Remediation, Education, and Management with Dr. Ellen Heed. I'm very interested in body work, which I have learned throughout my mentorship, not just from Nicole, but from Jamie Mose, who co-wrote the book, The Breach Release with Nicole, from Emma Moreland, from Gail Tully, who's also wonderful, the founder of Spinning Babies. I love body work, but I wanted to make it mine. And so it's, I'm taking a scar tissue remediation massage for people getting top surgery with licensed midwife Patty Garcia in LA. I'm going to continue this 2-year program. I'm going to learn how to help people not only with top surgery, but with bottom surgery and with other gender affirming surgeries. And cis people also need, pelvic floor PT. And while there are wonderful PTs out there, it's another financial burden when we're asking people to go, do this, do that, go to the chiropractor and the acupuncturist and the pelvic floor PT and get a doula and get a birth tub. And not everybody's going to be able to afford that. And so if I can do as much as I can in-house to help people, then that's what I'm going to do. So that is what I plan to do. If I could have only queer clients, wouldn't that be wonderful?
Sure.
But the fact is that they don't have babies as much as cishet folks do.
You said a 2-year program or a 10-year program?
2-year.
Okay, I was like, 10 years. That's amazing. And at the end, is it like a certification, a license, just another jewel in your jewel box?
I think that it is a bedazzled certificate.
Yeah.
The people collecting certificates like they collect Pokemon is very trendy right now, but I want the hands-on experience. And I find all of my clients, bodywork clients, through word of mouth. And I really like that. And so I would like to continue to provide people with comfort and with love and with care and have that get out than me flash my little certificate badge. Let me rub on your top surgery.
That's just a perfect example of like a normal midwife mindset. Like I immediately went to like cesarean scar recovery or cervical scar tissue from IUDs or episiotomy scar tissue. And you brought in this whole new world of color as well. Right. And then, so it's just like that. It's just that one example of the initial thought of what you would use that for and the world of what you can, of what's out there that some midwives just don't see or understand. That's really a great example of how you're going to be serving all atmospheres and communities.
Thank you.
Yeah, cool. So do you have a birth story that you would like to share with us?
I thought long and hard about this because I haven't been to an incredible amount. I think I've probably been to 80 or 90 births at this point as a student midwife, which doesn't seem like a lot, but is a lot considering I had one birth by the time I got into midwifery school. But something that really made me a midwife, took me from student to midwife, was an experience I had last year. I went to work in Pennsylvania for 6 weeks with a midwife that works with the Amish community, because they take 30-ish births a month, and there was one midwife and there were 2 students, and they were just drowning and they needed help. And so another midwife here and I flew out to help. And you don't have to have a license in Pennsylvania. And so I needed to practice the way that the other midwives practiced. And so I really had to step it up. And it wasn't for bragging rights. It was to provide people with good care. And let me tell you, the Amish community really do know how to have kids. We have beautiful sacred births here with twinkling lights and birth photographers and in-call water birth, and you let the baby swim up to the top and crawl to latch. They know birth so much better than the midwives, because all they do is work and family and birth. And I learned so much from people that view it as something so normal and everyday. It's not a big event. This is life. And sometimes this is death. Mm-hmm. And life and death, we don't have control over that. Nobody can play God in that way. If I could use that saying, I don't know if I'm qualified to use that saying, but I learned from these families how normal birth can look. And then I did it again and again and again and again and again. And I went to 4 births in one day.
After you had done like 10 in a year and a half or something, right? Or, I don't know. Yeah. It was something. Yeah.
So it was a really hard experience because specifically, they're very religious there. Mm-hmm. And I was instructed to not talk about being queer. I couldn't talk about having a wife. I couldn't talk about being non-binary. I couldn't use my pronouns. I didn't exist, but I wasn't there for me. I was there to help people that otherwise wouldn't have a midwife. And it was a really hard experience. And I don't know if I personally could do it again, but I learned more about midwifery in those 6 weeks than I think I could have in California from the English, as they call it. So while that's not a birth, that was a very humbling overall birth experience. People having 16 kids, they tell you when the baby's going to come, and if you don't have your gloves on, they'll wait. And you put your gloves on and they sit down and they're dead silent, and then they have a baby and they're gone 2 hours later because they have 10 other kids at home. So
yeah. And I gotta say, feeling and doing Leopold's and someone that's had 13 children is wow. It's a very, very different experience.
You said you're in Kentucky.
Mm.
There's a big Amish population in Kentucky as well. They're related. A good chunk of them are related. Everybody has the same 4 last names also. So I'm sure we know relatives if you work with them.
I'm sure you've seen babies of my sister's mother's other babies. Yeah. It is so incredible. And it's interesting. Like, I think everyone should have a chance to experience time with the Amish, because that's the same takeaway that I had too, was like, it's like another Tuesday night. It's just so normal. And I was like, is it the area, is it Midwesty? Is it Midwesty people? And I was like, no, it's mainly Amish, but that's what I mean about, like, birth is different everywhere. It's not the same. Birth is birth, sure, but like, it's not the same.
It's not the same. And there are people that go to other countries to get births, right? It's not, I don't think that was accepted in my program anymore, but there are some specifically white midwives that have gone to other countries to get their births and have, posted these pictures and done the whole white savior thing, when there are people here that look like you or look like me that can also be served. And so I felt like I was staying in my lane, so to speak, but
and they needed a midwife. They needed care too. So it's not like you were just going out there to take advantage of Amish and get experience. Like, they needed help.
I didn't get paid. Yeah, I worked for free, and I paid for a rental car, and I paid for my food and my gas, and I worked my ass off. And if I were in a different place, I probably would do it again. I'd go back for the community, for the Amish community. But I worked way too hard. And the midwife that I worked for she's probably been to 10,000 births. And I don't think that's an overestimation. I think that she has absolutely been to 10,000 births, 500 breech, 700 twins, triplets at home. She's done it all. She could do birth in her sleep. And that was wild to learn from her as well.
So when did you take the NARM?
I took the NARM at the end of June, on the 28th and the 29th of June. I took it in 2 parts.
I was just going to say, wait, you can do that?
You can. So I'm really going to just lay it all out there. I recently pursued a diagnosis for ADHD. And there are a lot of midwives that are coming to terms with having ADHD. I almost wonder if midwives are better.
You have to be
ADHD because they can do so many things at once. So because I have a clinical diagnosis, I mean, what a term, right? I asked for accommodations, and so they split the NARM into 2 parts. I got to be in a room by myself. I got to have earplugs, and it was very, very worth it. I wish I could have done my entire lifetime of education with accommodations. And I did not get preliminary results. Most people I know get results in, as soon as they walk out, 30 minutes, 1 day. 8 full days later, I got my results, and I went back and forth. I passed, I killed it, to I failed. I'm going to have to take this again. I'm going to have to pay again. Nobody's going to want me because I failed. And of course, that's not true. Just because I don't pass a test doesn't mean that I'm not going to be a good midwife. But I was
does not define you.
NARM does not define you. It does not. But I was in limbo, and it was worse stress being in limbo than it was preparing for the NARM. 0 out of 10 recommend.
Geez, some people have said that they take it and then they like go to a place where they don't have cell phone access, or like they go on vacation where like you just can't look. So it doesn't matter if it's coming in, it doesn't matter if you passed or failed, like the control is 9. Like you can't do anything about it. And like, that's a good trick.
Oh man. It was definitely out of my control. And I feel like I prepared for the NARM in a way that worked for me, that wasn't necessarily the way that I had been told that people study for the NARM. I barely cracked a book, any of my midwifery books, through midwifery school and studying for the NARM. Not that I didn't retain the information, but opening a 1,000-page textbook and reading chapter after chapter will not stick in my head. And so what I did was I had every study guide available, every midwife around me and all of my midwife friends. And I would go with them and they would quiz me. And there was one midwife, Tatiana Kuntz here in San Diego, that would spend at least 8 hours a day with me every single day before the NARM. I mean, I think she missed 1 or 2 days, but she easily was with me for 40 hours. She asked me every single question on huge, I think it was Jess Breedy's study guide. And we talked about every single topic. And that's how I learned, is I talked it out. And I actually feel like a midwife now, and I retain the information. So I feel like it worked for me, but I couldn't do the whole book thing. I had a whiteboard and I had my peers, and that is how I studied. And I got an 81.
So you got like a study, there are all these study guides, right? And you took those study guides and brought them to midwives and said, like, ask me the questions. Something that I hear a lot with NARM is that there's like these questions that are like, pick the best answer.
Every single one, pick the best answer.
And some of that can be really, really subjective. Pick the best answer for different communities, for different situations. Well, how long has it been? What did her prenatals look like? What about her labs? What about this? So what would you say is the best way to identify the best answer for NARM?
Everybody told me, think like a beginning midwife, think like a basic midwife. I wasn't even a midwife yet. So I didn't really know what an entry-level midwife is like, because I'm an entry-level midwife right now.
Right. So
I tried to go with either the most logical answer, like on the flat black and white basis, logical, or if I were going to have to transfer this client and triage was reading my report, what would I get sued the least for? So
interesting. Those are good pointers.
But, because the NARM is not indicative of what midwives practice like, though it may be in some places. And I still feel like most of the questions were worded fine enough, but I had to remember that I was not trying to outsmart the test. I was just trying to show that I had an overall grasp of the information of what was important to be a midwife.
That's interesting. So it was almost like, because if you had thought about it as like an advanced practice step, you would have gotten it wrong, because that would have just been the wrong answer.
Yeah. Or sometimes the answer that I would have wanted to pick maybe is not legal in another state. And so it's not, if I don't have the skill set, then I shouldn't be choosing this answer. And if I have it here in California, but on the NARM overall, that's not legal for CPMs to do, then I'm going to get it wrong, because I'm not choosing the most logical and basic answer. So yeah, I don't know what questions I got right or wrong, but I feel like it was straightforward. Would it have been nice to get in the 90s? Maybe. I will take my 81. I'm fine
Yeah.
with my 81.
What's a passing score?
75, 76.
So like over 75, like you have to get over a 75 or something.
It's weighted differently. Prenatal care, prenatal, well person, overall midwifery, postpartum, well baby, all of that is weighted individually and then combined. So I have no idea how they come up with the scores, but just because you don't get a 75 in labor and birth does not mean that you're not going to pass if you aced postpartum and well baby and well person. So
did you take it? I know you said you were like in a single room, but did you take it around the same time as other students in your cohort?
I did. There were 4 of us left that hadn't been licensed, and we had all been talking to each other. You know, some wanted to quit, some were stressed that we weren't going to get our numbers in time. I had to go out of state to get my numbers because I needed to be done. I couldn't afford to be a student anymore. And so the 4 of us really tried hard to stay consistent. And so there was one other person from my cohort took it 2 weeks ahead of me. I just took mine. One other will take it in the next 2 months. And then the last one will take it in the next like 3 or 4 months. So ideally we'll all be licensed by the end of the year.
Yeah. And like y'all are helping each other out, take the NARM and be prepared. And like, did you pass along all of the things that helped you to the next folks? And
100%. I couldn't have done it without other people helping me.
Yeah.
Like it was way more than paying it forward. People gave me their time. Midwives came from out of the woodworks when I posted on Instagram that I was stressed about the NARM. I was flooded with inboxes of people being like, I believe in you. You can do it. I'm going to send you my study guide, from people that I have barely talked to. And it really touched my heart. And I still feel the tears in my eyes from feeling so appreciated and knowing that I was going to do that for other people. And I will continue to do that for other people.
Speaking of doing it for other people, you're coming out of this preceptorship that you have gleaned this amazing fashion. And it sounds like your preceptor only takes like 1 student at a time, maybe 2, like 1 in primary, 1 in assist, or just 1. Who's taking your spot?
So for the last bit of my primary studenthood, I worked with a student. Her name is Phoebe-VelasquezIslas. She is a traditional birth worker here in San Diego. And what that means is she practices from a specific cultural lineage. And she has so much knowledge in things that I wasn't raised with, that I have no idea anything about, that the kind of midwife she'll be and the kind of midwife I am are going to complement each other, but they will not be the same. And so she's training right now, and she's going to an online program, but is not tying time to it. She is here to learn how to be a midwife. She's not here to get numbers, and that's really hard to do. And she's doing it authentically. And so I will stay. I have committed to the practice until she is fully ready to be a primary. However long that takes, I will continue to be there and support her. And even after that, she is going to be a wonderful midwife, and she has already taught me a lot. And I'm very honored and humbled to be working with her, especially now that I am done being a student and she's going to continue forward.
What does that look like to learn to be a midwife without only thinking about the checkoff of the number, of the skill? That's something that some people strive to do and start off wanting to do. and then get caught up in well, I could be done in blank many months or years if I just focus on this trajectory. What does that look like for her, and how exactly are you going to like stay on as primary to support her in that?
I do, just like you said, I think a lot of us try and say we're not in it for the numbers. We want to learn how to be a midwife. And while that is true, you have to get numbers. You have to have a certain amount of births and prenatals and postpartums and newborn exams. You have to do it. And so on some level, you are there for numbers, and the, the little break that I got from getting my numbers and from getting my CPM, it was short, but it was wonderful that I didn't have to worry about the numbers. And Phoebe is doing that because she doesn't care how long it takes. She wants to be a good midwife, and she wants to be the right kind of midwife for her community. She works a lot with teenage parents, and she works a lot with the Kumeyaay people on the reservation here. She works with Black and Indigenous peoples and people of color, and she really tries to put her effort into the people that she wants to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that means it takes 5, 7, 10 years for her to get all the information she needs, she's going to do it. And that's, she has 4 daughters. She has a husband. She has a whole bunch of pets. She has this whole life, and she's still going to dedicate what she can of her life to becoming a midwife. And I think that's beautiful. So she charts beautifully. She can set up a birth room like nobody's business. And so what it looks like now is I try and get her to do the newborn exam. And sometimes she says yes. And sometimes she says, you do it and I'll follow you. And so we talk about every single thing you do when you do a newborn exam, from asking the parents' permission to touch the baby, to asking the baby's permission to touch the baby, to pausing when you're feeling the head and feeling the sutures, and what you can feel and how you can feel the plates of the skull move. If you could be unrushed to do anything you wanted in a newborn exam. This is just an example. So that's what that's
what that looks like.
She can learn so many wonderful things from Nicole, and she will. And so I'm thinking about what I can give her in addition to that. And and I'm trying. I'll be a better midwife from trying to teach and trying to model it. So,
I think one of the driving factors in, and we've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but one of the driving factors in a student midwife's journey is finances. And I have been met with a lot of, rough attitudes when I say similar, like, I'm here for the experience, for the journey. It's like, well, what a nice privilege. Because it's true, right? Yeah. There are folks who need to be done with this process so they can make money as a midwife, because they are doing this right now for free. And going to school and precepting and being in an apprenticeship with absolutely no income cannot take 10 years for some people. It just is not possible. So do you feel like part of that is the system at work, right? The non-paid apprenticeships, right?
And it's also the medical system here in this country. Low risk births cost less than mid-level and high risk births do in the hospital. And insurance companies do not recognize home birth midwives, even though we cost a fraction of what it costs to give birth in the hospital. And the insurance companies are going to pay the hospitals. So that is a little.
So it's like way up here system.
They're punching down so hard. We don't even know who's punching us right now. So, so I was able to give a lot of my time because once I got into my apprenticeship, my wife started working full time, and she's able to support us both. And I am very lucky because I used to work 12-hour postpartum doula shift and then go to school and then get called to a birth. And no sleep for days on end. I thought I was going to die. And I'm so lucky I don't have to do that anymore. And Phoebe takes clients. She's a doula. She's been a doula for a long time. And she'll continue to do that. She has a lot of herbal knowledge as well. And so she's going to make it work for her. I made it work for me with postpartum doula and nanny, placenta encapsulation, whatever you think about that. It's not easy, but the reward, monetary or not, seems to be worth it at the end for those that stick it out.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, I have all sorts of examples on ways that I think that shortcutting it is only going to shortcut yourself and the people that you serve. But we just can't see that till the end, right? Like some people just, they have to get through, and we don't know their story. So it's so great to hear. We can get some slow burns going on so that way we can have really good coals, whatever we want to, whatever crazy.
Beautiful.
Ah. So, what would you, if you could give advice to students or new midwives or preceptors, or maybe to Phoebe, what would you say?
All of my unsolicited advice. I would first tell people, if possible, if it works for you, if you can financially do it, get a therapist, because healthcare is rough and birth trauma is real, and it does not only happen for the person that's birthing. It happens for midwives. And if you don't have a good support system, and not everybody does, and you carry somebody else's trauma with you to another birth, then you're impacting that person's birth with something that's not even theirs to carry. And so taking care of yourself with therapy or with other things, get a water bottle that you like to drink out of so you don't get dehydrated, get a migraine, and then drive off the side of a cliff. So, basic things like that, I think it's nice to hear. But if I could give one piece of advice to anybody that wants to be a midwife, I would say do it. Because if you are not going to be a midwife, you won't do it. If you're not meant to be a midwife, you will not make it through. And I don't mean that to sound rude, because that's not at all what I mean. It is not easy. Everybody says it, but you will miss weddings, you will miss funerals, you will miss birthdays, you will miss high school reunions, you will miss anniversaries and dates, you will miss pride, you will miss everything for this work. And at the end of the day, it's worth it. And so I would tell anybody that wants to be a midwife, do it, go for it. And I wish you luck.
What does your wife think about your work?
I feel
like midwife partners are like special in their own ways. And I was thinking about, you're talking about these things that we're missing. And I'm like, yeah, that first time that you get called into a birth in the middle of sex, it's just like a feeling unlike anything other.
Do I even have time to shower? Yes. So I have an incredible partner. Her name is Natalie. We've been together for over 7 years. We've been married for just about 1.5 years. Spouses, partners of midwives are a special breed. She gets up with me when I get called in the middle of the night while I get on my scrubs. She makes me a cup of coffee and she gets me lunch. She hands it to me with my water bottle filled up as I walk out the door every time. She has never once not woken up with me, even if it's, it's a mole tip and you got to go now, come in your PJs, don't brush your teeth. She still gets up with me every single time, and she doesn't have to. And I can't expect other people's partners to do that because they're not Natalie, but she built my entire website from the ground up by herself. And she she doesn't design websites. She figured it out because she's smart. She helped me with my application. She helped me with my NARM application. I have an incredible partner. And she's also very compassionate. And so when I come home and cry and I can't tell her what happened because it's protected health information. She gets me a hot water bottle and a blanket, and she puts on Great British Baking Show, and she sits next to me and she puts her hand on my leg and doesn't talk. And I am very lucky to have a wonderful partner. She's out of town at her 10-year high school reunion right now. So
you'd pull her in.
I know, like I talk about her all I want, but I am very lucky to have a wonderful spouse, because it's apparently very hard to stay married.
I was just going to ask, what's the timeline? How long did it take you to finish midwifery school?
I applied in 2016. I started in 2017. I graduated in 2020, and I passed the NARM in 2022. So from 2017 to 2022, 5 full years. Yeah. And I had 6. So to get all of my births.
But you knew her before.
We met at San Diego State. She worked at the apartment complex that we both lived at. And I had a partner at the time that went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And I would go and pay my rent in like $100 chunks on the day that I knew she was working. Oh. And then I'd go home and I'd call my partner and I'd tell him about the girl with the golden eyes at the front desk. And we had a bit of an open relationship, and he encouraged me to ask her out when we decided to take a break. And we went on one date, and we have been together ever since. And she's the love of my life. And sometimes you find it in a weird way. And I'm sorry that relationship ended in such an abrupt way, but she knew me. We met when I was 23, when she was 21, and I'm 30 now. She's 28. And we've talked about, midwives getting divorced and how it's like, what is it, like 50% now? We've talked about the trauma that comes with watching somebody have a really hard birth. She talked me through how hard it was in Pennsylvania to not exist and to not be able to talk about her. She has been there for everything. She's never, ever once raised her voice to me or yelled at me. We have never been in a fight. She's never said a bad word to me. I just
valid, too much. Well, and it is a big deal. Like I have this, I don't know if it's a theory, and I don't even know if I have it or where I got it from, but someone was saying something along the lines of, if you find your partner prior to birth work, it's really rare to be together because you were like a different person all of a sudden. She did not sign on to 24/7 call and middle of the night waking up to make you coffee and lunches, or the trauma of, a fetal loss or a hemorrhage, or you having to hold back a lip you didn't want to be up in there for, like she didn't originally sign on for that. Like she met you as a non-birth worker.
Yes. And we applied together. We had this conversation.
Yeah.
We both consented to me becoming a midwife, no matter what it looked like. And it was a rude awakening for both of us.
Yeah.
When we actually miss stuff. I miss things. I can't go and visit my family in Lake Tahoe. I can't visit her family in Modesto. I can't do it because I'm always on call, and it was rough. And she is all in, and she was all in when I decided to do it. And she will be all in if I decide to take my midwifery in whatever direction I choose. I have full faith. Yeah.
It's, I think, and I can't imagine dating as a midwife though. Like, can you imagine?
So I have, sometimes things are a little loose. Queer couples have, the same rules.
So like when you go on, like not a lot of midwives are able to successfully date. What is it like?
Successfully is the word.
There's the key.
Yes, it's very interesting to, this is a whole other podcast to talk about being non-monogamous while married or while having a nesting partner, and what it looks like to put your full energy at one time into one person, and then another person and another person. And I think midwifery has helped me be a better partner to my wife, but also to the people that I have dated, hopefully. And being non-monogamous has also helped me be a better midwife, because I have the ability to give good effort into all of my clients, and I don't feel overwhelmed because I have to focus on one. I can balance my time. So dating, I've been called away on a date. I have, been called away at a sleepover. And if you want to hang out with me, that's what it is. And if you don't like it, and we can still follow each other on Instagram, but you can't hang. I have a great group of friends that none of them do birth at all, but they just get it. I have only queer friends, really, like maybe one cis het person that like is honorary queer, and they all have no idea really what I do for a job, but so supportive.
Totally. Get out there, do the catchy baby thing.
Yeah, they're like, none of us are going to have kids. And they're like, I'm not doing any of that, but you go do it because you're good at it. And I just let them.
That's great. As a follow-up to that, this is the same question that gets asked to doulas, et cetera. But like, do you ever have pushback from people that are like, well, you haven't had children, you wouldn't know?
Absolutely. I've had less than I expected. I had a lot when I worked with the Amish.
Yeah.
And culturally, that's, you don't learn about babies until you're having a baby.
Right. And I think that culturally too, in a lot of communities, the midwives were just simply the eldest woman that had the most children. So it's like kind of understood that it would be a strange thing, but it doesn't have to be anymore.
It doesn't. And I know a lot of people that got into birth work because of their own birth experiences, and oftentimes their own birth trauma that they're trying to heal from, and they want to support other people and shield them from birth trauma as well. And so what I have to say when people push back against me not having children is that I will not be comparing your birth to my birth, because I haven't birthed. I can focus on your birth in this moment, and I don't have to think about anything that I would do or that you should do. I'm here just for you, and I will continue to be here just for you. And that's good enough for some people. And sometimes you just want that elder, you want the person that's had 1,000 kids, and I totally get that, and I will give you their information so you can go interview with them. But sometimes that doesn't matter when you're a good midwife.
Yeah.
And that's the goal.
And that's so similar in a lot of birth workers too. I always tell a lot of people who reach out and they're like, I'm thinking about becoming a midwife, but I've never had a kid. Am I going to be okay? And I'm like, you have so many edges over people who have had births. Couple of those are exactly that. If you had a traumatic birth experience, you're not carrying that. If you had a beautiful orgasmic birth experience, you're not carrying that. You don't have kids that you have to like take care of in the middle of the night when you get called to births and worried about who's taking them to the soccer game.
Which is horribly stressful for the people I work with.
It's so easy.
It's like, you still have to get groceries and you have to find somebody to take care of your kids, but you have to go to this birth because this is your job and this is your life. I don't know how parents do it, but I don't have to. And I am so happy that I don't.
And it gives the birthing person the ability to hear that they are a really big priority in your life.
Yeah.
Done.
Fine. I also don't take many clients a month. So I enjoy working with, I enjoy working in a team of 3. So the licensed midwife, myself, and then the student midwife, and usually 3 births a month. And that's it. And it's the perfect amount because I can give you all of my time and I can still go home and be with my wife and I can get groceries. Ideally, I would get a shower or 2 and it's working out.
When you're the licensed midwife, are you going to do the same? Like a license, a CPM, or a license, a senior student and an assist, or a license and an assist, or what does that look like?
It's a lot of responsibility. To have a student, it just, even me not having a student, but trying to support the other student I feel so much pressure to do it right and to do right by them, because I want them to be a good midwife. And if I teach them something wrong or something that ends up being tragic, then I carry the weight. And so I would love to work in a team of 3. I feel like, the relationship that you can make with a family when you're in a team of 3 makes birth safe. But will I have 2 students? I don't know. Maybe in 20 years.
Yeah. So right now it's like 2 midwives and a student, or 2 midwives and an assist is what your thought process is.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of people like that 3 thing, because it's like one for mom, one for the birthing person, one for the baby, and one for charting, right? Or cleanup or whatever. And you rotate who's what.
Absolutely. It really works. And also sometimes clients connect with one person more than another person. As a student, there was a client that wanted me to transfer with them to the hospital over the midwife. And she was very proud of me for doing that, because I had put the effort in to make that relationship. And so we continue to do that. We also do a lot of body work, and it's hard to do that all day. So we get to share, we get to do sideline release, and then somebody else jiggles, and then somebody else does ligaments. It's nice to have people to bounce off. And and then sometimes you do twin births at home when there's doctor, and 3 is not enough, and you wish you had more. But 3.
Have you had some of that experience with either Dr. Stu or his Veronica, right? Is it Veronica?
Dr. Flores.
Dr. Flores. Yeah.
I have attended births with both Dr. Stu and Dr. Flores. I have attended one birth with Dr. Flores, and then I think 2 or 3 with Dr. Stu. And it's very, I feel deprived that I didn't get a chance to be a midwife that is able to autonomously practice and care for people with twins, or people that
or breech, or
presenting breech, just because it used to be in scope, and then it was taken away by people that have no idea what midwives do. But it's interesting to practice with doctors, and I also think it's incredible that a doctor would want to do home birth, considering the way that they were trained. And so it's really, I have a lot of respect for people that support home birth. And also I think midwives are fully capable of being the primary care provider. And I would love to see twins and breech back in the scope of California licensed midwives.
Do you think that will ever happen?
They can dream.
Because I heard something about VBACs being taken away from CNMs up in California,
which is horrible. And they're trying to do it with licensed midwives as well. And I just, I don't understand. I don't understand. And I also have compassion. Again, I have to bring myself back so I don't get really rooted in anger, that the people that work in hospitals see the worst of the worst. They don't know what normal physiological birth looks like because they've never done it. And that's almost all that we do.
And they see the 10% that transfer in for an epidural or PIT. And of that 10%, the 1% that are like lights and sirens.
Yeah.
What do we call it? Train wreck transfers.
And I try, you try not to transfer train wrecks. That's you do your best. I'm probably going to be more conservative as a new midwife and transfer quicker than somebody that's been practicing for 30, 40 years. But, they see horrible things, but we see a lot of really normal stuff. And so I just think that it's a different way of practicing and a different skill set. And midwives are experts of our field.
Yeah.
And we can dictate what kind of births that we can do and we can't do. And so there's a lot of talk of there being a midwifery board in California and stepping away from that board, and that will have positives and negatives to it. It would be great for midwives to oversee midwives.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to seeing this conversation go forward and see what kind of midwife I'm going to be.
Yeah.
You know, legislative.
Do you see yourself like doing policy work in any way, shape, or form? Or
I used to want to.
Yeah.
And I don't, that's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of talking, and it's a lot of FaceTime with people that don't know what you do and don't really care. And I don't, you know, we have Sarah Davis here in San Diego that is really involved in politics and is a midwife. And so I think Sarah can do all of that.
Cool.
And I'll be here on the other side.
So where can people find you just to follow your new journey? And is there anyone that you would like to share Cash App, Venmo, their accounts for supporting the journey?
Yes. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram. Long interview. Instagram at Lindsey Oakes Midwifery. You can find me on Facebook at Lindsey Oakes. And you can find me at my newly published website as of today, lindsey.com. So it's LINDSEYOAKES. And there is another Lindsey Oakes out there that doesn't have an E in Oakes. We're not the same. We have completely different careers. So, and I'm happy to talk to any students or anybody that wants to be a midwife or that wants to know what a midwife does. My goal is to provide queer and trans people with low cost, sliding scale, possibly free access to healthcare, PAPs, STI tests, well person exams. I'd love to have people not have to worry about paying their bills or getting screened for STIs and making sure that they don't have cervical cancer. So I don't know how I'm gonna get the money to do this, but I have always worked on a sliding scale, and I'll continue to do that. And if anybody feels inclined to donate, I would be honored if they would donate to my fellow student Phoebe's journey as a midwife. It's a lot to pay for school and to have a family and to work for not a lot with a lot of hours. So you can find Phoebe's Venmo at, and I'll spell it out, Phoebe-VelasquezIslas, and then PayPal at misspheebes@gmail.com. And so I will.
Perfect.
An email. So.
You'll have all of that in the show notes for everybody listening. We'll make sure to put those in the show notes. Lindsey's website, as well as Phoebe's Venmo and Cash App, and ways to support their journeys.